Yeah, good evening, Mark. Good evening, everyone else that's watching us. So tonight's class, as always, is Le'iloi Nishmas on Yitzchak Tzvi Ben Yosef. There's the Shamash on elevation. Okay, let's see the comments here. So tonight, well, I'll start with a joke, right? We'll always start with a good joke.
Yes,
My daughter Mushka approved this one, so whatever. I won't comment. So here, daughter approved. So this truck driver is driving. He's tired. He comes into a diner to eat something. He gets himself a burger, some fries, a beer. He orders. He's waiting. Finally, the waitress brings him his beer and burger and fries. He's about to eat, and these three bikers, this gang of motorcycle bikers, comes walking in at the very moment that the waitress serves him his food. And they sit down. One of them grabs his beer. Another one grabs his burger. The third one grabs his fries. They start eating, and they're laughing at him. He doesn't say a word. He takes out a tip, leaves a tip on the table for the waitress, walks away. They start laughing at him. He's not much of a man, this guy. He just walked away with no comment. And the waitress says, yeah, he's also not much of a truck driver. He just ran over 3 motorcycles on the way out of the parking lot. Okay. Good evening, Faith. Good evening, Robert. Good evening, everyone from Ontario, Canada, and Joseph Kavanaugh from Fort Myers, Florida, and from all over that's watching us. Hello, hello. Okay, so let's talk about revenge. Yeah?
Yeah.
We know the 613 commandments in the Torah. 613 commandments. The vast majority of them are action-based or action-oriented mitzvot. God says, put on tefillin. Don't eat chametz. Eat matzah. Pray. Whatever the specifics are, most of the mitzvot are mitzvot that are done with our hand, with our mouth, with our body, with our physical action, with our money. You have several mitzvot in the Torah that are not action-based. They're in the heart. They're in the heart. Now, even though they're in the heart, they come out into action. But at its core, the mitzvah we're going to talk about today, although it has an action dimension to it, I want to really focus on the psychology and on the emotional aspect of the mitzvah, what leads to it, and therefore how we can avoid it and overcome the temptation to hold and carry a grudge in our hearts. So let's start right at the very beginning. Hello, Joseph from Pennsylvania. Hello, Beth. Good evening. I'm going to share my screen from my personal page. We're going to read a text from this week's Torah reading from Leviticus, chapter 19. It's a double parsha this week, Achrei Mos and Kedoshim. So in the second parsha of this week is perhaps one of the most famous verses in all of the Torah, definitely in the top 5 verses in the Torah, as follows. Verse 17. First, Lo sisna es achicha b'levavecha. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your fellow, but you shall not bear a sin on his account. You shall neither take revenge from, nor bear a grudge against the members of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Ani Hashem, I am the Lord. So we have 3 different mitzvot. Really. One is not to hate your brother in your heart. Number 2 is to rebuke him, but to be careful that when you rebuke him, you don't bring sin upon yourself. Because it's very, very easy when we rebuke somebody else to get into this state of righteous justification. I know rebuke is to reprimand someone. They do something wrong, to tell them that they made a mistake. There's some people that excel at that. They're experts at looking at other people and catching them when they do something wrong and noticing that you did something wrong and making sure to tell you, because the Torah says, rebuke your friend. So I was tempted to focus on this part of it, but I'm not going to. You have to be careful not to rebuke in a way that will cause you to have sin as a result of your rebuke. To rebuke, but in a gentle way, in a loving way. If in fact, the 2 parts of the verse are very much connected. The verse is saying, don't hate your brother in your heart, you shall rebuke him. Which means, and don't have sin because of your rebuke. Which means that if you are going to have hatred in your heart, your rebuke will lead you to sin. You have to be very, very confident and very certain that when you're rebuking, you're not doing it out of hatred or out of jealousy or out of some, what's what I'm looking for, some other motivation besides for the desire to do God's will and to help the person learn how to be a better human being. So again, I chose not to go into this path, even though I had a conversation with someone this past week about why we don't rebuke and Chabad should rebuke more, and I should be a more strict rabbi and tell people off when they sin.
I was about to say that.
That what?
If you're supposed to rebuke someone, then where is the limit? Like, when is it okay to rebuke?
So you have to rebuke. On the other hand, you have to be careful to love. The very next verse says to love. So I do have a prepared class. I do have things to say tonight. Last thing I let myself go off subject, but I'll just say this: if you have to err, I'll give you an example. In the Torah, we have the judicial system that is very, very strict. In order to meet the barometer of evidence to indict someone, to give someone the death sentence, they have to be witness or two witnesses, and they have to warn him. So what happens if only one witness saw? The court say innocent, not guilty. Most likely he is guilty. Who cares? Our job is not to play God. Our job is to do the best we can. When we have to choose between erring too much to the side of punishment or of assuming innocence, in the Torah we always lean to the side of innocent, unless we have all of our I's dotted and all of our T's crossed, unless there's two witnesses and they both saw and they warned him and they knew that he was watching them and he still did the sin, okay, then we'll punish him. But up until that point, we always err to the side of caution. If I have to take a risk, every time I open my mouth, I'm taking a risk. Am I speaking too much judgment, too much gvura, or too much chesed? Personally, I would rather always err on the side of chesed than on the side of gvura. Rather be on the side of love than on the side of judging and punishing. I didn't say gvura is no good. I just said when you have to choose, it's better to choose to be too much to this side of kindness and love. I'd rather love too much than rebuke too much. So whenever I'm not sure if I should rebuke or not, I always go to the side of love. You can never go wrong with too much love. You can never go wrong with too much love. It's very easy to go wrong the other way. That's all I'll say on that part of the good explanation. Okay. Satisfied? If Nasara is satisfied, I'm satisfied. Erica says I should tell people off. Listen, it's easy. To tell people off, it's easy. You know what I'm saying? It's like to be a rabbi and say it's forbidden. There's no greatness in a rabbi that can tell you something's forbidden. Greatness is when he can figure out a way. I should be very careful what I'm saying now. It sounds like you should always look for leniencies. But true wisdom, a true Talmud Chacham, is someone who can find a way to be lenient, a way to be, to find a way that it should be allowed. Good evening. Okay, so anyway, let's not go into that direction too much. We'll go back to Megillah. What do we want to talk about? The next verse. What does the next verse tell us? What does the next verse say? Lo sikum. Do not get revenge, which in Hebrew is called nikama. Don't do nikama. Below sitar. Do not bear a grudge against the people of your nation. Rather, you shall love them. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So first, I just need to clarify, what is the difference between nikama and netira, or in English, between revenge and a grudge? Torah says two things, right? Shall not take revenge. You shall not bear a grudge. So what is the practical difference between revenge and bearing a grudge? Okay, and the grudge is in your heart. Very good. As I said, we're going to talk about in our heart. So as Rashi explains, revenge is someone comes to you and says, can I borrow pick something, your phone. Can I borrow your phone? And you say, no, my phone's not working today. It's broken. It's out of service. I don't know. The battery is dead. Because you don't trust them with your phone. Then next day, you need a phone. So you go to someone else and say, Robert, can I borrow your phone? He says, yesterday when I need a phone, you wouldn't lend one to me. So today I'm not lending you my phone. That's revenge. That's the comment. That's revenge. Yesterday, you didn't do something to him, or you did something to him. So today, he's not going to lend his phone to you because he's getting you back for what you did to him. That's revenge. The grudge, or in Hebrew, netira, you're not doing anything. Yesterday, he asked to borrow your phone, and you said no. And today, when you ask him to borrow his phone, he says, even though yesterday you didn't let me borrow your phone, I'm not like you. I'm not that kind of person. I'm going to still lend you my phone. See how nice I am? So here, the person's not doing an act of revenge, but in their heart, they're still thinking about the way that you mistreated them yesterday.
So it's not pure.
It's very far from not pure. It's much worse than just not pure. Here, the person is still holding on to the hurt of yesterday. So even though they're not behaving that way, the Torah is saying, don't bear a grudge. Don't keep it in your heart. Don't let that feeling that you had, don't let that stay with you. So not only should you not act with revenge, you shouldn't even in your heart hold on to that grudge. And then the Torah continues, you shall love your fellow as yourself. Which, as I said, is perhaps one of the most famous verses in all of the Torah. There's been many classes and many ideas to explain this idea of loving your fellow like yourself. How is it possible to love your fellow like yourself? But I'm not going to talk about that either. If I'm not going to talk about rebuke, I won't talk about, if I won't go to the other extreme of rebuking, I won't go to the Chabad extreme of loving either. I'm going to stay in the middle tonight. Yeah.
That I don't want you to do to you something that I don't like you to do to me. So that I have to learn.
Correct. But we're not going to talk about that now.
Did I-
You should love your fellow, yes. But what I want to just talk about is the revenge part. Because that's something that many of us, all of us, struggle with revenge. Listen, all of us get hurt. All of us are, we live in a real world of people that are not always so nice. So every one of us have had times when someone has hurt us, where someone has offended us, where someone has been mean to us. It's part of living in the world we live in. So how to not carry that in your heart, how to let go and not carry that resentment and not to hold on to that poison. You know what resentment is? Resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. That's resentment. Or another way of saying it is like setting yourself on fire, hoping the other person will die of smoke inhalation. That's resentment. And it's very easy and very seductive almost to fall prey to the quicksand of resentment. Call it nekama, call it natira, whether we actually act on it or we can pretend to be mature enough to not act on it, but we're still feeling it in our heart. Either way, we're committing a sin. Either way, either we're acting with revenge or we're emotionally holding it inside us, which is the grudge, which is still a sin of the Torah. God is clearly telling us you cannot do that. And obviously, if the Torah tells us you can't do something, that means we have the ability, we were hardwired by our Creator to not bear grudges. Even though it's so seductive, it's so exciting, it feels good to sit and wallow in that victimhood, etc. So what I want to talk about tonight is two perspectives on how not to bear a grudge. How not to hold on to that anger and that resentment and that feeling of hurt that causes so many people to become so bitter and so awful and insecure and sad and whatever. However it expresses itself, that it comes from. Okay? So perspective number one.
Can I ask a question first? This
Sure.
is talking specifically to Achicha or Miabecha. What about a goy? If it's okay to
I'll repeat your question. Are you allowed to have revenge against a non-Jew?
I
So
mean, it makes sense that no, but why is it specifically saying that? So I wonder, it makes me wonder.
So the verse is talking about hating your brother. The thing about your brother is about the hate. You're not allowed to hate another Jew. You're not allowed to hate your brother in your heart. The lesikam lesitar against the members of your people. I'm not sure why it says the members of your people, but everything I'm going to say tonight about the psychology of carrying it in your heart, it makes no difference if we're talking about a Jew, a non-Jew, a religious person, a male, female.
This is kindness, because of the other way.
It's not only a kindness. What I want to talk about is not holding on to resentment. So that makes no difference who it is that caused it. It could have been a freak accident. It could be resentment against God too, for that matter. We're talking about a person that hurt you. Whether that person meant to hurt you or didn't mean to hurt you, whether they were your relative or they were a random stranger, whether they were Jewish or not Jewish, whether they were important or it makes no difference. We carry this resentment. So two perspectives. Actually, the truth is, the first one might be connected a little bit to a Jew, but we'll see. So, and by the way, I want to repeat, when the Torah tells you not to hold it in your heart, the Torah is telling you that you have that ability to not hold it in your heart. That's what the Torah says it to you. So let's focus on idea number one first. But before that, I want to read to you a piece of Gemara. So the Gemara says, the Talmud in Yuma says, I'm going to share my screen for a second. Something amazing about not bearing a grudge. Says the Gemara in Yuma. Bamar Rava, didn't Rava say, whoever forgoes his reckoning with others for injustices done to him, the heavenly court in turn forgoes punishment to him for all of his sins. When we find within ourselves the ability to not judge, because what's nikama? What's the first step of bearing a grudge is that I judged you. In fact, the words grudge and judge sounds pretty similar. I guess there's a connection there. I'm upset at you for whatever you did wrong. And very often, the grudges we hold are legitimate. Very often, they're legitimate. The person did indeed hurt us. They did say that hurtful thing. They did what they did was legitimately bad, legitimately painful, legitimately hurtful. And yet the Talmud is quoting a statement of Rava that when we can, so to say, transcend the judgment that we have in our heart against the person that hurt us, so too God in turn is able to let go of his judgment and treat us beyond the strict letter of the law and treat us the way that we would want to be treated by God. It's a beautiful idea right there. Letting go has a certain tremendous impact in heaven. That in heaven they also let go of things that we've done. That already makes it worthwhile to let go even if you don't feel it. But how do we let go? So the first is a classic explanation. I think it's of the Chinuch. I'm not sure. I didn't look up. It's in my head. It's a very classic, beautiful explanation. Which is that the Torah is putting two different commandments into the same verse that seemingly are not connected one to the other. If you look at the verse, so I can't not speak about v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. I am a Chabadnik at the end of the day, so I can't not talk about it. But look at the verse. The first half of the verse says, don't get revenge. Don't bear a grudge. What kind of person do you think we're talking to? A person is an angry person. He's a revengeful person saying, don't get revenge. And then what's the second half of that same verse? You should love your brother, you should love your fellow like yourself, right? It's the same verse. It's not the same chapter. It's not like one, they're next to each other. Literally the same verse is putting together not having a grudge and loving another like yourself. So there has to be a deep connection between these two ideas if they're in the same verse. So the commentaries explain that the second half of the verse is actually giving you the ability to do the first half. You want to know how to not get revenge? Recognize that this person is part of you. How do we love our fellow like ourselves? How is it possible to love another person? V'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. You want to know how to love someone else? The way you love yourself. How do you love yourself? Without judgment. This is very simple what I'm saying now. We love ourselves not for a reason. Assuming we have a healthy self-esteem, we're healthy human beings, we inherently love ourselves not because we're good at school, not because we're smart, not because we're pretty, not because we're hardworking, not because we're successful, we love ourselves because I love me. Every healthy human being should love yourself just because you are you and for no other reason. You don't need a reason to love yourself because it's you we're talking about. Says the Torah, you should love your fellow like yourself. You should love someone else because they are you. They are a part of you. And of course, in Chassidus, it talks about this a lot, the idea that on a spiritual level, we're all part of the same person. Kuma Shlema, one body of the Jewish people. We're all one part, we're different parts of one whole. So, on one hand, you're the other hand, we're all the same. This idea, this basic idea, it's a premise, it's a foundational idea. In fact, Rabbi Akiva says, the mitzvah of v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha, the mitzvah of loving your fellow like yourself, is the klal gadol b'Torah. It's a foundational idea of all of Torah. To recognize that another Jew, another person is a part of me. We're all in this together. So that explains how to not get revenge. Imagine I'm holding a cup of tea in my hand. Nice hot cup of tea. And by accident, I spilled the tea on my other hand. Would this hand now punish this hand for spilling tea on it? No. Why not? This hand spilled hot tea on this hand. So this hand should slap that hand or spill other tea, go get more even hotter tea and spill tea back on that hand. But this hand would never get revenge on this hand for spilling the tea in this hand on that hand. Why not? Because it's all you. To get revenge against yourself is like, it's worse. Resentment is where I'm setting myself on fire, hoping the other person will die of smoke inhalation. You think you're getting someone else. Here you're trying to kill yourself by your own fire. The two hands are one person. Nekama only makes sense if you are separate from me. So there's me. You, an outsider, hurt me. So now I am going to get back at you. But if me and you are two parts of one whole, if we're all part of the larger picture of the Jewish people we talked about before, if we're all part of one body, so then now I'm going to go hurt myself. How does that make any sense? Doesn't make any sense. So that's the first idea, that we have to learn to let go because we're all part of each other. It doesn't make any sense. But on the deeper level than that, shalom everyone that's watching. Shalom. I'll see there are a lot of comments actually over here. The idea that vengeance is Hashem's way of getting to us. We'll talk about that soon. Revenge is scary. Yeah. A lot of very good comments. So revenge is like the hot stove burner. You learn how to go. That's what I want to talk about now. When you're carrying on to this grudge, you're holding on to this grudge, and you're carrying all this poison within yourself, and you're giving this guy space in your head, you're actually doing the number one thing that stops us from living a happy life. Do you know what the number one step of living a happy life is? Number one thing that we need. If we want to be happy people, the number one thing that we need to live a happy life, money.
Forgiveness.
Well, hold on. Money is the classic answer, but it's actually, not only am I saying it's not true from a religious perspective, statistically and sociologically, there's many, many studies that will show you that happiness is absolutely zero correlation to money. I personally know many rich people that are miserable and many less wealthy people that are very happy. There's no correlation having money and being happy. None whatsoever. Connectedness, okay. Forgiveness. Those are both good things. If you want to be happy, the number one thing you need in your life, peace. Okay, it's connected to peace. How do you have peace in your life? Thank you very much, Vivi. How do you find peace in your life? Acceptance. Excellent, Karina. Excellent. Acceptance. The way to live a happy life, the number one secret is to be able to accept whatever is happening to you. To accept that God is in charge of the world, and whatever condition I have, whether it's a medical issue, a financial issue, a child issue, a marriage issue, whatever the issue is, it doesn't make a difference what it is. When we fight it, when we're upset about it, we can't be happy. The moment we can accept it, then whatever it is, it really makes no difference what it is. The moment we can accept it, we can then be at peace. But the step to peace is to accept. And at that moment we accept, we can live. Now, acceptance, I need to clarify, is not the same thing as surrender or resignation. What is surrender? Surrender is giving up, exactly. Surrender means I'm helpless, I'm useless, I have no control. I surrender because there's nothing I can do. I'm resigned to whatever God decides. I'm resigned to this, let's say, medical issue or a family issue or a financial issue or my job, whatever it is. It's a very fatalistic, approach to life. Defeatism. I'm resigned. I surrender. Acceptance in no way means that I surrender and I give up. In no way. To accept just means I recognize my situation, I accept that this is my situation, and now I'm going to deal with it. Doesn't mean I'm resigned to it. It means I can accept my facts and now go accordingly. So I was another rabbi, he told me that when pilots know when they're flying a plane, you hear from a pilot, when you're flying a plane, so of course something happens, what do you want to do? You want to stay flying, right? You want to go up, you don't want to go down. But what happens if the engines are failing and you know you're going down? The worst thing to do is to try and somehow keep the plane going up. You need to get the plane down to land, to try and get into. So you have to go against the instinct is, we're following, let me pull up. You got to go counterintuitively against the instincts. You're not surrendering because you're not saying, hey, oh, help, that's surrender. You're flying the plane. You're actively accepting the challenge or whatever the difficulty with the plane is to try and be able to land it in a successful way. That's what acceptance is. That's what acceptance is.
You said accept and what?
Versus surrender.
No, after that you said you accept it and go forward, move on.
Then you can deal accordingly.
Deal accordingly.
Deal accordingly. You can only deal accordingly when you can accept the facts. As long as you're not willing to accept, you can't deal, you can't cope, you can't. You don't have a choice, whether you don't have a choice or you're not even able to emotionally, in grief, there's denial, there's anger. You can't deal with it as long as you're in denial or in anger, or you have to accept. The moment you accept this is the fact, this is, well, from a deeper spiritual perspective, this is the challenge God wants me to have. This is the situation God wants me to deal with. At that moment, I now can find peace, and I can make a plan, and I can deal accordingly, and I have the inner strength to know that if God put me in this situation, obviously I have the resources, and I have the inner strength to be able to overcome. It's acceptance. So it's a very important idea, especially if you're a believing Jew, especially if you believe in God. If you believe in God, this idea is fundamental to our entire belief system. There is no one in the world that can do anything to us, Jewish, not Jewish, big, small, if they weren't put there by God to do so. It's a very, very famous story. When King David was running away, he was looking at the king. He was the son-in-law of Shaul, who was then the king. And he was running for his life. And Shimon ben Imri started to curse him. And Yoav, who was the general of the king, again, he wasn't the king, but David's general, wanted to go kill the guy for cursing King David. And what did King David say? Don't touch him. Why? It's not him cursing. God put those words into his mouth. So King David is a person who's truly at peace with himself. King David is a person that can truly accept that whatever happens in my life, my HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's from God. So the fact that I'm being cursed right now, yes, this person is choosing to curse, but that's between him and God. It's not my job to deal with the fact that he is doing a sin. That's God's job. My job is to accept that God wants me to get this memo. For whatever reason, God wants me to hear this message and to internalize it with whatever message I need to hear. It's a difference between doing God's work and doing God's job. You know what the difference is? The difference between doing God's work and doing God's job. Well, God's job is to run the world. It's not my place to do God's job and to take over the running of the universe. God's work means that whatever position, whatever situation God gave me, I'm going to do the work that I need to do in the position that God gave me. So we need to do God's work. We should never try to take over God's job. There's a very famous statement of the Rambam that the Rebbe spoke about several times. So the Alter Rebbe speaks about in Tanya. So the Rambam quotes the early sages. It's not in the Talmud. It's a struggle. The commentary struggle where to find the source of the Rambam, but it's actually in the Zohar, in Kabbalah, where the Rambam writes that Kol hakoyes ki'ilu oived avodah zarah. Whoever gets angry, it's as if they worshipped an idol. Why is getting angry equal to worshiping an idol? Same idea. Why is anger equal to worshiping idol? Because anger only happens when I think that somehow you did something bad to me. Or you hurt me, and that makes me angry. The moment I understand, so what's happening at that moment I'm getting angry? Or that I'm bearing a grudge against you? I'm idol because I'm giving you godlike powers. I'm giving you, obviously mistakenly, godlike powers to that you have the ability to impact me. And that's why I'm angry. And that's why I feel I need to get back at you. So the desire for revenge, the desire to get back at somebody else can only exist in the mindset of a person that is giving godlike powers to a non-godlike entity. That is avodah zarah. That's idol worship. Clear? Okay.
How's that different from King David when he didn't hurt the man and he said that God put the words
God-
in his mouth?
So the King David accepted the fact that the man was cursing.
But isn't he giving the man God-like?
No, he said God put the words in his mouth. Exact opposite. King David said the fact that this person, Shimei and Imri, is cursing me, it's not him cursing me. God is cursing me through the mouth of this person. This person is nothing more than a mouthpiece. He has no control of his own what to say or not to say. Clear? Great lesson, very clear. Thank you. Other God that is being angry, exactly. There's so many beautiful comments here. We're going to go through all the comments, God willing, afterwards. I want to tell you a story. You may have heard this story. It's a story about a bunch of brothers. Most of them got along, but there was one of them that didn't like very much. So they sold him as a slave.
Joseph.
Yeah, very good. Very good. They sold him exactly. They threw him in the pit. They told their father he died. They sold him as a slave. What happens? 22, exactly.
And then they go before the king of Egypt to Joseph, and Joseph forgives him.
Exactly. Joseph forgives him. Very good. And what happens? We all know the story, right? He reunites with his brothers. He hugs them. He kisses them. Says, "Don't worry. Come to Egypt. I'll take care of you. Call my father. Tell him to come quick." Many more years go by, and Yaakov Avinu passes away. So Yaakov is taken to Israel. They go make a beautiful funeral for him in the land of Israel. All the brothers go. A whole story. They come back, and the brothers begin to worry. Why they worry? They said the fact that Yosef forgave us and has been nice to us all these years, probably it's because our father Yaakov is still alive, was still alive. So as long as our father was still alive, he didn't want to get revenge at us in front of his father. He was a goody. So that's why he didn't do anything now. So now. But now that Jacob has passed away, we're in trouble.
So
Not
like
good.
when Michael Corleone's mother died, he waited for Michael Corleone's mother to die.
I don't know who that
before
is.
he killed Fredo.
I don't know who that is, but if you say so. The point is, they were afraid that now that Jacob is no longer alive, that's it. Their protection, if you will, the protectia is over. And now Joseph's going to really get to them. So what happens? They send messengers, and they make up a story. They make up a story that before Yaakov died, he asked that you should forgive us and you shouldn't hold anything against it. Now, Yaakov had never said that. He didn't suspect some, but they did. So they made up a story. And then the brothers themselves come before Yosef, and they bow down and they prostrate before him. And they say, our lives are in your hands. Please forgive us, etc., etc. How does Yosef respond to that? Do you remember how Yosef responds? So Yosef responds with such unbelievable, powerful words. Yosef says to them in Genesis chapter 50, verse 19, it's in the paper, it's in front of you. Yomer Aleim Yosef. Joseph says to them, Al tiro, don't be afraid. Why not? Because as Marsha said correctly, Ki atachas Elokim ani, am I in the place of God? Do you think I could do something that God wouldn't want to happen? If 10 of you couldn't kill me without God's desire, could one of me kill 10 of you if God doesn't want? Of course not. Verse 20, indeed, it's true, you intended to do evil against me. Yosef is not whitewashing what his brothers did. He's not oblivious. He's not stupid. He knows they tried to hurt him. But who cares what you wanted to do? You're not in charge of the universe. But God, He designed it for good in order to bring about what is present to keep a great populace alive. Right now, the fact that I am here in Egypt is the greatest miracle that could have happened to humanity, because through my coming here and interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh, I was able to save the world during famine. So yes, it's true that you intended to do evil to me. But who are you? Who are you? You're not in the place of God. God didn't have the same plan as you. God had a good plan. God had an amazing plan. God had a plan to bring me here, lahachayos amraf, to keep a great populace alive. And since God's plan was a good plan, my life is great. I have no reason to be angry at you. The fact that you had plans to do something evil, that's between you and God. Your plans did not impact my life. Your plans were your plans, and God will punish you for your plans. My life is fantastic. My life is what God intended for me. And what God intended for me was tremendous. It's not that Yosef had a grudge, and Yosef had to work on his character to say, I'm going to be a tzaddik, I'm going to be righteous, and I'm going to forgive for the grudge. I want to clarify this. Yosef is not forgiving his brothers. He's not saying, yes, you're evil, yes, you tried to sell me, but we're brothers. Let's live, let bygones be bygones. Let's forgive, let's forget. That's not what Yosef is saying. He's saying, you never did anything to me for which I need to forgive you. I don't need to work on myself to let go of the anger I feel inside, to not carry a grudge. There's no reason for me to forgive you because you never hurt me. You can't hurt me. No human being has the ability to hurt me unless that's what God wants. And if that's what God wants, then it's good, then that's what God wants. Everything God wants is good. Human beings are not able to hurt me. So the moment we recognize that God is in charge of the world, and I don't mean to recognize that in an abstract way, but the moment we can recognize that in a real way, in a way that we actually live it and feel it and internalize that truth, that God runs the world, I don't need to work on my character to find a way to let go of my resentment. I don't have resentment because God didn't let anything bad happen to me. That's the real secret. The real secret of living a happy life is to accept that God is in charge. When I can accept that, I can internalize that, I have no need to work on letting go. I don't need to make calculations with like we're all part of one body and one hand spilling on the other hand. It doesn't make any sense. So why would I spill on this hand and then punch that hand? Nothing is spilled. Nothing hurts me. I felt like hot water just fell on me. I feel like I just got burnt. God is in charge. God obviously has a plan for you. And obviously, we all know the stories where things that seem to be bad and seem to be painful and seem to be hurtful ended up later being good. The story of Yosef is a beautiful example. There's so many modern day stories where someone tried to hurt someone. I know someone, actually one grade older who went to school with me, they were twin brothers. I've said this story before. They were twin brothers. And if you think brothers sometimes fight, twin brothers, right? They were fighting. They were young kids. I don't know how old they were. I was with them in high school. They were young kids. And one of the brothers took a brick or a rock and threw it at his brother. And he cut him really, really bad. He got like a huge cut. He had to go to the hospital, get stitches. They were afraid that the brick was dirty or rusty and that maybe got contaminated, tetanus or whatever. So he did x-rays to see if he had, any internal damage. And when they did x-rays, they found he had a tumor growing on his heart, on his lungs. I don't know exactly where in his body, but they saw in the x-ray. And right away they did surgery. Obviously, it was still in an early stage. Baruch Hashem. He was totally healthy after that. Wow. True story. I know the two brothers. So here, imagine you're the mother, imagine you're the boy, and your brothers threw a rock at you and almost killed you, God forbid. He threw a rock at you. That's a very painful story. It's not that your brother was angry, but God wanted you to go to the hospital and have this tumor removed. That's we accept that God is in charge. Sometimes we see immediately how God is in charge. Sometimes, like Yosef, it takes a number of years till you can see it. And sometimes we never see it. In this world, anyway, in this lifetime. Of course, in the next world, we see everything. But sometimes we don't see. That's why we ask God to tell us, to show us. We ask. But even if God doesn't show us, we learn to accept. That's the secret of not having to come. Okay. Now I'll tell you a story. I'm with a story and a practical takeaway. And then I'll go look at all the comments afterwards, okay? So, there's a story in the Zohar about a man called Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba was a student of the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whose Yortzeit is coming up soon, like Ba'omer. So one of his primary students that would transcribe, and he was teaching was a student called Rabbi Abba. One day, Rabbi Abba is traveling. He's on the road, and he stops to sit down, to eat, to rest. And he sits down, he sees a man who's sleeping on the side of the road. He was tired. Also another traveler who laid down to rest with his head on a rock. And he's watching this poisonous snake is coming, you know the story? Is coming towards this man that's sleeping. Now, why is he sitting there and watching? And he's watching. And this poisonous snake is about to bite and kill this guy that's sleeping. At the last moment, a rodent comes, a weasel, a mouse, I don't know, a rat comes, bites the snake and kills the snake. Takes the snake away, goes to eat the snake is dead. He couldn't believe it. So he stays there, he's watching. The man finally wakes up, oblivious to the fact that while he was sleeping, a poisonous snake almost killed him. At the last second, a rodent came and killed the snake. The man gets up, and the wall that he was leaning against, the shade, immediately gets up, his head up, the wall falls down. It was like by a room. There was a wall of shade, and the walls fall down, and the rocks go tumbling down the side of the road, like a side of the road, and all the rocks that now just been resting on all fell off down the side of the ravine, on the side of the road. 2 miracles in an hour. So Rabbi Abba goes running after this man. He says to him, stop. You need to tell me what tremendous mitzvah, what tremendous merit do you have to merit such unbelievable protection from God? So the man has no idea what Rabbi Abba is talking about. So Rabbi Abba says to him, you're a holy man. I saw 2 miracles happen to you where God saved your life, first with the snake, and then with this pile of bricks that you were leaning against for shade that fell down right after you got up. So for sure, God is protecting you. What did you do to deserve this protection? The man says, I can't think of anything. So you have to think. There's something you did, something you do. Tell me what you do. The guy's telling him his day, thinking about his day. Maybe this. I'm not sure, maybe this. Every single night, before I go to sleep, I think through that day about if anyone hurt me. Story. I think that anyone hurt me this day. And if there's anyone that hurt me that day, I think, was it my fault? That was something I could do to make it right. And if not, and if I think that it wasn't me and it was them, I then say with a whole heart, I forgive that person for hurting me. That's what I do every night before I go to sleep. I think about the day and I let go of anyone that may have hurt me that day. If it's something I can't fix, I forgive them with the whole heart. So the Abba stood up, says in the Zohar, and he says, the master of the universe, this man is worthy of all the miracles you do to protect him because he's even greater than Yosef HaTzadik. We just talked about Yosef a minute ago who forgave his brothers. He had no animosity, no grudge in his heart to his brothers. So Rabbi Abba, Yosef forgave his brothers. Brothers are brothers, right? Who wouldn't forgive their brother? Don't answer the question. Who wouldn't forgive their brother? That's it. Yeah. So theoretically, I guess in the Zohar's times, Yosef forgave his brothers. So he forgave them. But this man forgives everyone, and therefore he's deserving of tremendous blessings. And as a result of that, was instituted in our Siddur every single night before we go to sleep. In the Kriya Shmash Alamita, in the prayer we say before we go to sleep, you know what we start with? Ribono Shel Olam, there's a paragraph. It's in the Siddur, right up here. Second on the way. So we say in the Siddur, Ribono Shel Olam. Hareini mochel l'chol mi shehichis v'hikdadosi. I hear forgive and forgive any hurt me in any way. Here it's on page 141. I hereby, Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who has angered me or vexed me, or shachata kenegdi, or has sinned against me. Ben begufi, whether they hurt me physically, ben b'mamoni, whether they hurt me financially, ben bechvodi, whether they offended my honor, ben b'chol ashali, whether they hurt anything that belongs to me, ben ba'onas, whether they did it by accident, ben b'ratzon, whether they did it on purpose, intentionally, Ben b'shogeg, whether it was inadvertent. Ben b'mezid, whether it was deliberate. Ben b'diba, whether they hurt me with speech. Ben b'maisa, whether they hurt me by action. Ben b'giluzah, whether they hurt me in this reincarnation. Ben b'gilach, whether they hurt me in another previous lifetime. I pray to God, l'choba yisrael shem adam b'sibasi. I pray to God that no man should be punished on my account. Yehi ratzon milfanecha. Your will, Elokai, Elokei, Messiah, God, and the God of my fathers. Shelo echtaod, that I should not sin anymore, nor repeat my sins. Neither shall I again anger you, do what's wrong in your eyes, etc., etc., etc. That's how we start off our prayers at night. With this paragraph, where we ask God, not that God should forgive us. That's the second half of the paragraph. First, say, God, I forgive anyone that may have hurt me. And after we are able to recognize that no one can hurt us but God is in charge, and we're able to forgive and to let go of any resentment in our own heart, then God says, I'm going to forgive you too. That Gemara I quoted to you earlier from the Talmud in Yuma, that whoever Rava says, whoever can forgive others, God forgives them. That's how we start. And this is a practical takeaway you can take away starting tonight. I mean, I say this prayer every single night, but tonight I'll actually think about it. And then I'll actually meditate on it for a minute. I'll say for me. I'll meditate on this prayer for a minute or two before I say it tonight. And think, who may have hurt me? Who may have offended me? Who may have caused me any kind of physically, financially, in my honor, in my family, and everything I own? I forgive. And the moment we can forgive, then God says the same thing about us. That's the return. We don't do a mitzvah for the reward, but the reward is amazing. Could there be a greater reward than knowing that our forgiveness of others will in turn inspire God to forgive us? I think that's the greatest kind of reward we could ever ask for, the greatest kind of blessing. And so that's the takeaway for tonight. To be able to say before we go to sleep, God, I have no resentment in my heart. My heart is empty. No one is getting free rent in my head. No one is taking over my life. I forgive. I let go. I hold nothing back. Okay. Now I'm going to look at all the comments. I'll start with my personal page. Beth says, letting go and not holding on to hate keeps you healthy. So true. Very important words over here. I can't control how others view me. I can only control myself. My wife's wife said to Mayor today about teachers, about this and that. The only person you can control is yourself. So others will do what they want to do. That's between them and God. The brothers of Yosef will do whatever the brothers want to do. That's between them and God. We only have what we have inside us, which is pretty powerful. Good evening, Bruce. If we are part of the whole of... So we're all part of humanity. Of course, the question again about the being Jewish versus all of humanity. And the point is no human being can hurt you. Yes, we have to feel a special sense of brotherhood to our brothers and sisters. And we're all part of one family. And usually the people that hurt us are the ones that are closest to us. So usually the ones that hurt us are the ones that are closest to us. A random stranger walks by you in public and says, hey, you're ugly. How would you respond? Who cares?
I'm ugly.
Yeah. So said to me, I would laugh. I wouldn't like, what? You too, yeah. Have a nice night yourself, you know. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. I don't know, like, whatever. It wouldn't bother us. But now imagine that your spouse said, hey, you're pretty ugly today. You know, like, that would be very painful. That'd be very painful. Yeah. That's what the I would say. Some people would be really hurt by that. Some people less secure than you would be very, very deeply hurt. They would need trauma. They would need counseling. They would need, they need a therapist. What?
She's getting revenge.
Yeah. That's revenge, exactly.
She has a tractor trailer.
She has a tractor trailer. Yeah, she has a truck. They'll drive over the motorcycle. Yeah. So she would, So the people that hurt us are the ones that are closest to us. The more in our hearts and the more space in our hearts a person has, the more ability they have to hurt us. And that's where we need to work hardest at recognizing that even though I love them and even though I care about them and even though I've let them in, the end of the day, they don't control my life. Not for good, not for bad. The only one's in charge is God. And once we can do that, we can continue to love them without being hurt by them. That's why this idea is so powerful. It's only the people that don't hurt us, we don't need to love them. It's the same thing. It's the people that are in our hearts that have the ability to hurt us in our hearts, that have the ability to, somehow really get to us. And that's why we need to learn to accept and to realize, first of all, I can't hate myself. I can't bear a grudge against part of me. If we're together, if we're a marriage, if we're a spouse, if we're a couple, if we're a family unit, then what? I want to get revenge on my own family, get revenge on my own husband? How does that make sense? Someone who says, I'm going to get revenge against my spouse is like one hand saying, I'm going to slap the other hand for spilling tea on me. It's exactly what it is. If you see your spouse as someone outside of you, then you feel the need to get revenge and to get them back. And that's how marriages fall apart, because we end up with this mindset. There's me, and there's how you make me feel, how you impacted me, versus a mindset of there's a us, and when the mindset is us, then we grow together. Everything I said, by the way, we could say the exact same thing, just with the word husband and wife instead of, person and person. In fact, it'd be even more powerful in the context of marriage, now that I'm thinking about it in this language. There's some marriages are me versus you, and those are marriages that are doomed to failure. Either they'll end in divorce or they'll stay in marriage, but they're bitter marriages. They're bitter marriages because there's this constant revenge, this constant. Well, you said that yesterday, and you forgot that last week. And then there's marriages that are built upon the foundation of there's an us. We're all together. We're one unit. For one unit, then. Yeah, so one part of the unit messed up. Okay, so together we'll fix it.
Why do you not sit and talk to each other?
What? Why?
Sit and talk to your spouse.
Yeah, sit and talk to your spouse. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. Some people are not good at listening. Some people are not good at talking. Some people are not good at either. Some people don't listen. Some people don't talk. Let's say a joke that this couple. So this guy was telling his son that the first 10 years of our marriage, my wife did all the talking and I did all the listening. The next 10 years of marriage, my wife did all the talking and I did all the listening. Now we both do all the talking and the neighbors do all the listening. Anyway, yes, it is, Lynn. It is very hard to not have a grudge and to not. We're talking emotionally. Anything that's in the heart is hard to do. Anything in the heart is hard to do. Don't give others a power over yourself. That's exactly right. This is better than therapy tonight. Free therapy. With some humor thrown in. Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's go look at Chabad.org now. The choice is to let go. I'm going backwards. The choice is to let go. That's exactly what we're saying. It's our choice to hold on and to let go. But deeper than letting go is to not let it get to you in the first place. In the first place, it shouldn't even get inside you because God is in charge. Thank you, Art. Thank you, Heidi. Beautiful meditation. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate your kind words. Thank you, everyone, for the comments. Wherever you have, thank you. Beautiful. Baruch Hashem, very much appreciated. Something to ponder, something to remember. Next week, same time, same place. I don't know what's next week. We'll find something good. We'll take feedback for ideas if you have any biblical characters to talk about. Anyway, Laila Tov. God bless you all. Thank you.